Beautiful.
Well, we're at the Wetland Education Centre and we're having our meeting to fight Row 8. We have people who are signing up for the first time to our email updates, and we're also having people sign a petition which we're sending to Parliament. We have lots of options here to fight it, but keeping people informed is critical, so email updates are what we need to do, and we've got a huge database already, but we expect it's going to get a lot bigger. And the petition is always, we've had petitions before, but this one is a serious petition. I think it's something to really fight.
I heard you had 3,500 signatures before and actual put forward as submissions.
We did, yes. We had, it was the most submissions that had gone to an Environmental Protection Authority review, and we were the most. The appeals period is coming up, and we're expecting that we'll have lots of people do appeals as well, so we're expecting a record number of appeals to the EPA as well.
Are you feeling successful in regards to the outcome on this?
It is very early days. We have a long way to go, but we are very determined, and we have stayed here. We have been protecting the wetland for 30 years. There are members of our organisation who have been here for 30 years. They have fought other roads. We're not done yet.
What brings you down here tonight?
Just want to stop this unnecessary road and protect these wetlands.
I used to live over in Beeliar Lake, just behind a section of bush that's going to be destroyed for this road, so it's just an unnecessary expenditure of taxpayer money, and it's destroying one of the most precious urban wetlands that we have left, endangering Carnegie's Black River 2 and graceful sun moth and countless other creatures that is going to be absolutely horribly impacted by this.
Yeah.
So we're doing all we can to get behind stopping riot.
It's not a stupid political decision with no real proper thought that's gone into it. And no one thinks about the animals and the habitats and the noise pollution for the local residents as well.
I truly believe that governments that deciding for the people what's going to happen next is wrong. We have to stand up and say what is good for us first before government taking actions. In a sense, government don't exist without people, not the other way around.
Okay, everybody, we might get started. So, welcome everybody. Welcome. It has just been so amazing, the response that we've had since the EPA report came out on Friday, and you've all been activated. We've all been activated. We are all appalled at this decision, and I know that you are, because that's why you're here. I'm Nandi Chinna. I'm the convener of the Save Beeliar Wetlands group, and this is Kate Kelly. She is a former convener and now media spokesperson and report appeal responder. And this is Piers Verstegen from the Conservation Council of Western Australia, and he's going to talk to you about the process of how this works, how the appeals process works. So I'd just like to pay my respects to the Noongar people of this area, past and present, and I welcome any Aboriginal people who are here tonight, and I welcome any of the mayors and politicians who are here tonight. Thank you for coming. I also welcome all our affiliated groups. We have many groups in Perth that are affiliated with our cause, other conservation groups. You know, it's just so fantastic that you're all here and we can all work together on issues like this, because this really is the last straw. I mean, if North Lake and Beeliar Lake go, it's a green light for anything else. You know, places of this importance, for them to be able to put this kind of development in a place so significant and important is basically a green light to any bushland, any wetland, any ecosystem on this one coastal plain. So I'll briefly tell you where we're at before I hand over to Kate. As you know, this EPA decision on the main road's proposal to put Row 8 through North Lake and Beeliar Lake, through Coolbellup and Hamilton Hill and the suburb of Beeliar Lake. This decision's a very huge disappointment to us. There's many of us been working for years and years against this. This decision flies in the face of all the science, the heritage, the social studies, and all the reports on the importance of this area. You know, it's a system that has a greater biodiversity than Kings Park. It's a very complex, unique wetland system that doesn't exist anywhere else. It's a highly important Noongar heritage site, and that has not been addressed at all in this report. And it's extremely valued by our community, as you can see from the turnout tonight. And basically what this decision means is that the EPA aren't doing their job. They are supposed to be making unbiased decisions on the science, and they are ignoring the science. They are doing the bidding of the government. They are not protecting the environment, which is their role.
Shame!
Exactly. Shame. And this decision is not the end of this campaign. It is not a green light for 08. It is just another stage. And there is a lot we can do, and there is a lot that we have to do. We really have to do. So we need you to be ready, as you have shown that you are, to support us in putting in appeals, writing letters to politicians, coming along and helping to organise events, joining our committee, helping to organise, come to our non-violent direct action training, which we're running next month, and just really join together and help to fight this. We're also going to need a lot of funds to run this campaign. It may go into legal action, so we need you to help donate, to raise funds, and to express your outrage. So now I'm going to hand you over to Kate Kelly.
Look at you all. Just lovely to see so many fantastic people here, local people, ordinary people who you know, have felt this call. And I hope by the end of tonight you know how you can help us, and you know how you'll be able to get involved. Okay? So first, my job first of all here is, and I'll be speaking a little bit later about what we can do, but I just wanted to try and put across, I guess, our early understanding of what this report means, okay? So it's my job to briefly outline what we think this report says from our group's perspective. I'm going to read a lot here because I want to make sure I don't get anything wrong, okay? So this report is huge, and it's got many appendices which still need review. We're still going through it, but I can say this. On the face of it, the report grants conditional approval for a 4 to 6 lane highway to be built through the wetlands, okay? Through the wetlands, the park and reserve of this area. It states that 97.8 hectares, that's about 45 AFL football fields, of the area will be cleared of native vegetation, and 6.8 hectares of wetlands will be lost. To compensate for this, the EPA recommends that the proponent could buy another wetland, but the proponent had their eye formally on one, but now it seems that this one isn't available. So if they can't find the one that they propose buying, an amount of degraded land will be bought, and they will try to regenerate it. That's what they say. Obviously, the idea of degrading this already very functional suite of wetlands that we have here is horrific and almost too much to comprehend. There is no replacement for this impossibly beautiful wetland. That their offer, if you like, is so poor is really sickening. Okay? Insulting. It's insulting. They also give quite a few other questionable conditions, like including weed control programs 10 kilometres away at Thompson's Lake, which is a noble cause, don't get me wrong, but shouldn't this be done anyway?
Yes.
They also suggest asking local groups like Save Beeliar Wetlands and the Coban Wetlands Education Centre and the Wetlands Conservation Society to help them regenerate areas of North and Bibra Lake after they've built the road. Yeah, that's their consultation process for us. That's the only time that they have come and consulted with us, okay? So some other highlights include using the precautionary principle in precisely the opposite way to how it was created to be used, which is to avoid environmental destruction where scientific data, including baseline data, is uncertain, right? So the fact is, this report is characterised by its lack of scientific rigour, yeah? Whilst the report supplies insufficient data to even assess its noise from traffic claims, it does admit that there will be places where noise may exceed limits. However, there is no info on how local people will manage this or be compensated for it. There is insufficient data on how animals will cope with this noise. It doesn't explain how animals will cope with the 24-hour noise and light scenario and how breeding patterns or anything else, especially their health, will be impacted. The loss of cultural and social heritage, especially for locals and Noongar groups, is underrepresented and totally dismissed in this report. The EPA's report looks in isolation at each of its narrowly defined impacts and is unable to admit that there might be cumulative impacts and effects for humans and wildlife from, for example, fragmentation of habitat, noise, light, emissions, and the sum of all these effects. They have created an imaginary line around the highway, its bitumen and tarmac and the bridges, and put a 10-metre buffer around this. This is what they call the zone of direct impacts. Outside of this area, they claim there will be no damage to the environment. This is a completely unbelievable claim which needs to be challenged, right? So, especially in the light of what I spoke about before, 97.8 hectares of native vegetation, for example. They say, they say that there will be no damage, but if there were to be any damage, this would then trigger a monitoring, management and mitigation scenario, right? Logically, this has serious issues. It makes no sense because the baseline data that they have already accepted from the proponent has been shown by the Department of Environment and Conservation, amongst others, to be inadequate. So, for example, how will we be able to know with certainty whether wildlife has been affected if we don't already have decent, original research to show how they are travelling now? Adverse events will not be able to be accurately assessed if the Minister accepts this proposal and approval. Okay, I'm just going to wrap up now because we're going to get on. But ultimately, from our perspective, this report is a whole new low standard from the EPA, okay? Which, although it is supposed to be a watchdog, the protector of the environment, has become some kind of shady broker a slippery middleman for the government's developing processes.
Fantastic to see so many people here, and how great is it to have these community leaders stand up for the environmental assets that we have here. The EPA was created by community pressure saying to the state government, we need an independent arbiter of environmental decision making, an independent assessment of environmental issues, and that was its job. And it's so amazing to see how far it has deviated from its original mandate and from its original mandate in actually supporting the community to a situation where the EPA is making decisions which are so far outside of the envelope of what the community believe is acceptable, that you know, you've got people who are taking time outside of their day jobs to come and say this is not acceptable. We've got to do something about this, and that's really what has to occur here. We are the ones that have to hold the EPA and the state government accountable now. The EPA is not doing its job, so we've got to do it. This community has already set somewhat of a record. The only other project that received more submissions than this one to the EPA was the James Price Point gas hub. So we've already got a situation where a very close-knit community and a very special environmental asset is generating a lot of attention. But now is the time to really ramp that up, because going forward, the government are going to look at this point in time. They're going to look at the community response that happens now, and they're going to take that as a bit of a litmus test on the response from the community and whether they go forward and actually make that big horrendous investment decision and actually go forward and build that highway. So now is our opportunity to make a big noise, to get angry, to get active, and luckily the Environmental Protection Act and the processes that were established back in the day when the EPA was established do allow us some mechanisms to do that. We can't rely on those mechanisms, but they are there and we have to use those mechanisms. One of them is that there's an opportunity to appeal EPA recommendations, and remember, this is not a decision by the EPA, they're recommendations, and the Minister for the Environment makes the final decision. That's the Minister Albert Jacob. So I'll talk a little bit about that appeal process, because it's critically important that we engage with that. But it's not just the State Environment Minister that has to approve this project, it's also the Federal Environment Minister, Greg Hunt. And he has to give consideration to some specific things, Carnaby's cockatoos and some other matters of national environmental significance. So he's got to say yes to this as well. So there's a long way to go before they can start laying bitumen. And the more noise we can make now, and we've really got to show that there is a very large groundswell of community support for this campaign. So it's really critical that we get active now. The appeals process is very short. It's open for 2 weeks, and you can make an appeal to a separate body from the EPA called the Appeals Convener. So we are encouraging people, as many as possible, to make appeals. They have to accept appeals in any form, but they do have a standard form that they like you to use. If you don't want to use that, you don't have to, but they do like you to use that. And what you have to do is look through the EPA report, or even if you can't see the EPA report, just take from what Kate said, the information, and raise objections to that. If you have objections that relate to the process the EPA has used, if you think they've breached their own policies, which I can tell you they have, if you don't agree that this wetland should be destroyed by a road for whatever reason, write that as an appeal and put that to the appeals convener. The more people that do that, absolutely the better, because not only will it show the political system and the appeals convener that there is a very large community of support here, but it will tie them up for a long time in going through all those appeals, and it will delay the process. And that could be one of the key things that could go in our favour. So anything that can slow it down, delay, add costs is really important now. So we've got to engage with the appeals process, but not everyone will want to write an appeal. An appeal could just be 2 sentences, and so that is valid for an appeal. But you do have to pay $10 to lodge an appeal, so not everyone might want to do that. So the appeals are about the content and they're going to assess each appeal on its merits. But this is also about a numbers game, and Kate's going to tell you in a minute about how we actually generate thousands of emails and petitions to the Premier and to the Environment Minister. Now, remember I said that there was thousands of submissions generated previously to the EPA, over 3,000 submissions. Well, we've got a new Environment Minister now. So when that was happening, we had a different Environment Minister and all those submissions went to that Minister. He's moved off to a different portfolio, he couldn't care less. We've got a new Environment Minister, a clean slate, so we've got to do it all again because we've got to show how powerful this community is. So really it's very important that we engage in that process, and one of the grounds of appeal, one of the reasons we can challenge this is that there's absolutely no transport or planning justification for this road. Nothing. The justification for this road is a political one. It's to get traffic out of Liberal electorates into Labor electorates. That does not solve the problem. We know that wherever you build more roads, you just end up with more traffic jams. You might at best relocate them from one place to another. But $700 million, public taxpayers' money, to be spent on destroying environmental assets like the ones we have here, cultural assets that are irreplaceable, no way. We've got to send them a signal, not only not to build this road, but that money needs to go into sustainable transport solutions, get the freight on rail. The reason why I mention this is that it's not just the Environment Minister and the Premier that have got to hear this, it's the Minister for Transport and, importantly, the Treasurer. We've got to make him realise that $700 million spent on this project is a complete waste. So that's probably all I need to say right now. But and also, these guys probably won't say it enough because they're modest, but please donate to the campaign. There's one thing that's going to help this campaign become successful. As has been mentioned, we may well go into legal challenges. This appeals process can set us up for legal challenges. If we raise issues through the appeals process that the Minister then has to consider, that can set us up for legal challenges later on down the track, which may well be necessary. Even if we don't go there, these guys, we need to do all kinds of stuff that costs money. So please, if you can't do anything else, make a tax-deductible donation or just donate to the campaign. Thanks very much.
That I was hopeful that the EPA was going to actually stand up this time and actually do what it's done before and say what it has said in this report, that there are unavoidable, irreplaceable aspects of this terribly destructive road. But unfortunately, we cannot now rely on them. So this is the moment, right? We have to stand up for what we know is right. We ask that everyone here, whether as a part of an organisation or as a household, stand by us. Stand by us. We need you to help us stand and fight for what we now know is a critical part of this campaign. Okay? So for any groups that are out there, and we've just identified there's a lot, if there are any groups that came after we acknowledged all of you, can you please tell Nandi afterwards? For any of those groups, we would like you to choose a liaison person from your organisation. In the short term, we would ask you to put, we need that person to come and network with us for any ongoing actions. Okay? Is that clear? So please choose someone. In the short term, those groups, we ask you to put in your own appeals to the appeals convener. If you need help, we're happy to aid you, but you must understand we are working under severe time constraints, and obviously we're working hard on our own appeal. So the more appeals, as Piers pointed out, the more appeals and grounds the convener receives, the better. So we ask that you consider also putting out a press release as soon as you can, today, tonight, tomorrow, supporting our campaign, and that you also contact Jacobs and Barnett and tell them that you're unhappy about the EPA's decision to conditionally approve this highway. Please use your networks to support our cause and ask your membership to consider putting in their own appeal, to sign our online petition, and to contact Jacobs and Barnett. Okay. Second point. If there are any scientists out there, please, we really need your help with the appeal. If you can read and identify the issues in that report, and also identify the legislation or the acts that temper those issues, please email this to us. Well, we also have 2 meetings for science-focused appeals making processes. Did that make sense? So we're having 2 meetings for the scientists basically to talk about appeals. One is this Thursday at 5:30 p.m. If you've got a scientific buddy, rope them in. Ask them to read the report and come along. We need help. The other one is on Sunday at 1 p.m.
Is that here?
They're both here. Yeah, they'll go for a couple of hours. Okay? So that would be fantastic. Third point. For those of you who are not part of a group, we ask basically that you do the same. Please put in your own appeal using your own reasons. If needs be, use ours for some ideas. We've got a little cheat sheet for you to give away. I'll be going through all the sort of materials at the end of this little information session. So yeah, sign the online petition. It's up there now. It's on the CCWA website. You can also access it through Facebook. Please, please, please send a personal email or a letter, a personal one, to those ministers. We've got the details here. The reason is politics, as you may have guessed, is a numbers game, okay? So as we saw with the solar rebate back down, the government is sensitive to public pressure, okay? Let them know how you feel, you know?
Oh.
Do you feel as much as I do about this beautiful wetland? Please, please, write and get other people that you know to write, okay? Writing, even though it's very old-fashioned these days, is actually something that they take notice of because you need to set time aside to do it. Okay, so it's a step up from the click, but click, 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 you know? Okay. So I guess what I'm asking is that you harness, as I try to do, some of the sadness and the anger and the fear that I feel, and put it to some good purpose, you know? You will feel a lot better. I know that I did. I felt devastated on Friday, but as soon as I started doing things, I felt a lot better. So please, put your feeling to good use. Harness it. It's a good wind if you can make it for a good purpose, yeah? So, yeah, it'll get us. It'll get us to our paradise place, yeah. So harness that wind. Okay, so here's the bad news. We've now only got 10 days. We've got 10 days to get as many appeals in as possible, and it's going to cost you $10, okay? 10 days, $10, but it's probably $10 well spent, okay? All right. Now, donations. Donations would be fantastic. Even if you can't do anything, donations will actually be fantastic. And if you've got an organisation, again, please ask them whether they can give us like a serious amount of money. We need this money for legal appeals, for research, for media, for ongoing campaign costs like banners, Panadols, that kind of thing. Please, not really for Panadols. Okay, that's a personal thing. So please help us out. If you or your organisation can, we are seeking a fighting fund of how much? We're seeking a fighting fund of $50,000. $50,000, right? $50,000. A little bit ambitious, but that's just the kind of people we are, right? We can get there.
Cheaper than the road.
If you want to be part of our strategic group moving forward, we'll be meeting here again in 2 weeks' time. Okay? So we welcome you, especially if you have experience with writing, media, fundraising, or basically any other useful skills. I'm sure everybody here has got some of those. So please come and join us. We are going to be having a rally. I don't know when, but we are going to be taking it to this government, and we need help. Okay, so, okay, here's the thing, right? People like us, people who love and value the environment, we're usually a pretty peaceful lot. Yeah? Yeah. It takes a lot to get us worked up and ready to do what is necessary to protect what we love. But this time has come in our campaign. We've organised a non-violent direct action training for the 20th of October, which is a Sunday, 10 a.m. to 3 p.m. I want you to seriously consider joining us in that training session. We need to be prepared for what might be ahead. Okay? We need to start that process. The guiding principle of that training is that with respect for our community, our opposition, ourselves and our environment, we affirm that if necessary, we will engage in peaceful direct action to protect our wetlands for future generations. I want to assure you that we are right to love and defend such a beautiful place. We're in the right. And I also want to assure you that if we work together, we can win this struggle and we can protect this wetland forever!
And I wanted to say we can win, because we had a win last Thursday at the City of Coburn. As you know, the Dockers are proposing to move their stadium to Coburn Central West. The proponent there is Landcorp. We made a deputation to the City of Coburn and we won. We overturned their decision. They were going to fill in a wetland, not quite as good as Vibra Lake and North Lake, and they were going to build another wetland to replace it, 200 metres to the north. How stupid was that? There were 3 of us that made a deputation, one from the Wildflower Society, one from Felicity, and one from Landcorp, the proponent. At the end of that deputation, the council unanimously overturned the decision because it was stupid and it was not according to the vision that the City of Coburn had for its environment.
Quickly, archaeological sites that are here in northern River Lake are the 4th most significant in the whole of the metropolitan area. Now, they have totally ignored the Indigenous side of it, but just so you know, the Indigenous community and SWALS, which is the official government body, are opposed to it. And what needs to be done as well is, at the time, which we can let you know, we would need you also to write to the Indigenous Minister to say that you oppose this, because the cultural thing of this area belongs to all of us. You may be able to offset environmental issues and things like that, but how do you offset an archaeological site that is pertinent to a place? So if you be aware of that, that we can also make you aware at the time for everyone to write to the Minister saying that you are opposed to this also on Indigenous grounds, and that it's also culturally significant to all of us, not just the Indigenous community. And in terms of the EPA, which we have met with them, their new label for me is now the EAA, which is the Environmental Approval Authority. And just like Pia says, this is totally a political push. As Main Roads, and Rex was with me when we met with 12 of the consultants And on the very first meeting, we presented our arguments and asked them, please tell us we're wrong. And not one of them could. And the reason being is because they've been told by the state government that they must adhere to their policy, which is to come up with a way of going through. My belief is also the EPA has also been told the same thing, which is totally wrong if they're supposed to be independent. And that is something that we are going to be pushing the media to be asking that question of the EPA. Have they been independent, or have they been coerced by the minister and this government to follow their policy?
You've got to look a little bit more.
There's a bird between us.
We are outraged.
Outraged.